but the last one for Unshackled Productions is actually based here in Phoenix. She is awesome, awesome, awesome. What I love about her is she is not afraid she's not afraid of where she's been. And so I am hoping that you will be open as she chooses to be honest tonight. So as she comes in her own way, please welcome Miss Anna Darian.
I would say the story's a little bit different than what we've seen, but I'm not sure there's a common thread in anything we've seen tonight. So, I hope it does get erotic because I'm freezing. All right, so right after undergrad, I got engaged to, I might just scream on this one. Okay, so I got engaged to my college sweetheart. And we had moved up to Portland about 4 days after undergrad. This was like a big thing for us. We were going to finally become adults, and we signed the lease on our first apartment. And on the very first day that we signed this apartment, he looked at me and he said, "Is this a romantic night?" And I didn't know what to say. And then he proposed, and I said yes. But it wasn't the type of yes where you go and like plan a wedding. It's like the type of yes where you're like, I'll think about it on my own, but I can't really say no because I know it's a breakup. So I say yes, and it sort of hyperdrives my sort of debate about whether he's the one, whether I want to be with him forever. We were very different, and I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do this forever. But one of the other things that bothered me about him, but he was my first. I had lost my virginity to him. And so if we did get married, and if we actually stood the test of time forever, that meant he was my only and my last. And that bothered me. I really felt like I wanted to like explore something. And it bothered me so much that I told him, which I would not recommend doing because that didn't go over so well. And after about a year of this debate, I finally decided, I do actually want to explore my 20s, and I ended the relationship. And I immediately got the studio. I was in downtown Portland. It was this like apartment complex full of young people, and we were all just wilding out post-college. And I befriended these two girls. And they're the type of girls that are like regulars at clubs, and this was something I wanted to like catch up on last time. So I was like, I joined these girls, and we used to go out every weekend. It was like we were regulars in these places. We could like get to the front of the line, and bouncers knew us. And the other thing I wanted to catch up on was some sex. And so I decided that I wanted to have a one-night stand. I'm a pretty planned out girl, so I was like, I'm gonna do it. I think this is the time. I find this guy, he's perfect for it. He's like this high, he's like half Puerto Rican, half like a lot of things, and just like 100% hot. And he's kind of like, he's flirting with me, but he's flirting with everybody. And I'm like, this is perfect. I will never take him seriously. I'm not getting attached, and this is the ideal guy. And so we kind of start to lay the groundwork. We're kind of texting this one week. I buy an outfit. I buy this dress. It's like white and baby pink with like ruffles. It's like seersucker. And then I show up. It's like Saturday night at the club, and he's buying me all these drinks. And in my head, I'm like, it's a done deal. But okay, I'll take the drinks. And I'll get the Grey Goose, and why not? And we get to 2 a.m. and that debate kind of starts where it's like, well, we won't we? And I'm like, I'm not this type of girl. I don't do this type of things. But apparently I am. And so he comes back with me to my place. And I make this classic rookie mistake. We had a conversation. We talked. We got to know each other. He became a person. And that's just not what you want in a one-night stand. And we talked until 5 o'clock in the morning. And by this point, we sealed the deal, but at this point he got in my head, and I'm thinking about him the next day and the day after, and I don't want it to be a one-night stand anymore. But luckily, I peaked something in him, so he contacts me, and we kind of keep it going. And we sort of had this routine where we'd like meet every weekend at the club, and then like sort of hang out afterwards. Never any real dates, no dinners, nothing really fancy here, but we had our routine going. And we do this for about a month. When I show up, as appointed, Saturday night, same club, same guy, different girl, not me. And he's there with this girl who's like this Greek goddess-looking thing. And it turns out she literally is Greek. And not only that, but her name is Anna. My name. Not Anna, Anna. And I'm Armenian, so Greeks are kind of like cousins to us, and she's kind of like my cousin if my cousin was like 5'10" with like hair to here, like models on the weekend. And I knew that she modeled because I would stalk her MySpace account, because this was 2007, so don't judge me. And it was clear that he had chosen his replacement. So I did what every rejected woman does. I quickly tried to fill that void, no pun intended. And so I'm, cruising around, and I find my candidate. I didn't know at first that I'd found my candidate. Our first interaction was he was actually at an ATM, and he's sort of beating it, and he's yelling at this ATM, and like the money's not coming out. And I come by just and like, well, you need money in your bank account for that thing to work. And apparently he likes like a little shark song or something, because he comes after me. And the only other part of the night that I remember was a dance that we shared. The song was T-Pain's "Let Me Buy You a Drink." It was 2007, okay, summer hit. And I only remember this because there's like this mortifying part where, like, kind of partway through the song, he starts to say like something like, "Now walk it out," and like, I'd seen people walk it out. I knew that I didn't know how to walk it out, but that day I was like, I'm gonna try to walk it out. And I remember just being like, I don't know where I was walking to, but I don't even know why I recant that. But that was like the only part that I really remembered from this night. It starts to get foggy beyond that. But I do remember bringing him back to my place, and I don't remember using a condom. And apparently it does just take one time, because about 3 weeks later, and maybe 5 hours later on my period, and my worst nightmare comes true. And I didn't waver on the decision. I decided pretty quickly what I was going to do, and I terminated the pregnancy. He's on board. He didn't need any convincing on this. I did decide to tell him. Apparently this was his 3rd time through this, so he can actually help me decide, do I go the pill or the operation? He was like my consultant on that. But it's not a story about the tragedy of an abortion. It's not a story about what it feels like to walk past protesters while they call you a murderer. And it's not about how shitty he was and how he wouldn't take me to the clinic because he didn't like those types of places. It's a story about sort of the moment I walked out of there and the years since. It's been about 7 years since then. My friend ended up taking me, and she picked me up, and we drove home, and we kind of just didn't say a word. She didn't have that normal post-doctor conversation about like, how did it go? How do you feel? Like, we knew that this was not a topic of conversation. She didn't ask, I didn't tell, and it just went on like this. I don't think I even said the word abortion, like the actual word, for about 5 years. I told my mother maybe a couple years ago. At the time, she was going through like her 3rd reconciliation with her Catholic roots, so I didn't really know how she landed on the issue, so I didn't need to hit that with her. So, but it really wasn't part of the narrative that I really talked about through any of my 20s or anything. And recently I kind of started to think about it because I was driving home this past Thanksgiving, this last few months ago, and I'm listening to this podcast. I'm driving from Phoenix to Tucson, and there's this woman, she's probably in her 50s, and she's talking about an abortion she had in the 70s or something, and then sort of activism work since then. And the question comes up, like, why are we still so polarized about abortion? Like, it's been 40 years since Roe versus Wade, and we still like kind of fall on the same lines. Like, and she gives this theory about how, kind of like comparison to the LGBT community, how for that community, this is really part of a, defining part of who they are. And so there's a natural tendency you're going to like be more passionate, whereas abortion doesn't really define you. And I can get with that. I would like to think it doesn't define me. But I also think there's a certain visibility or a silence to it that makes it to where that has a more powerful impact on it. And so I decided, I'm like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to start talking about my abortion. And there's no time like the present, so I pull into Tucson, I pull into my family's house, and I just instantly, just no small talk, just get to the point. Anybody will listen, I'm talking about abortion. Which is a great way to start off Thanksgiving dinner. But my family's amazing, so they're amazing. I knew that one of my family members had had an abortion when she was younger. She did not know that I knew, so when I start talking to her about it, she's a little taken aback, but she's still gracious, and she gives me this advice to like go to, she did an abortion reconciliation class, and I guess you like name your baby and like just, like let it go, and I was like, thanks, but like that's awful. Like I was like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I was like, I mean, just talk about it. Like I've made a lot of dumb decisions, just talk about it. And then I kind of go off on this like rant where I was like, you know what? And first of all, I was like, I know what this thing's gonna be. It's a bunch of women like beating themselves up about it and, you know, guilt stricken. I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. And I was like, and first, like, there's not even any guys in there. Like, let's be honest. So no, I'm not doing this. You guys don't care. And so then my mom joins the conversation at this point, and she's like, well, you know, your father got a girl pregnant back in the day when he lived in the Soviet Union, and then she couldn't have a kid afterwards, and he really beat himself up about it. So you know what? Guys do care. And on one hand, I'm like, is this really the time for the devil's advocate right now? I'm like, really, Mom? Thanks. But on the other hand, I'm like, is everybody having abortions? Like, I kind of, not that I wanted to be like a unique snowflake with it, but I kind of thought it was like shocking a little bit. But like, at this point, I'm kind of just feeling boring. And so I'm like, you know, get to Thanksgiving, and I'm just like stuffing my face with turkey, and I'm like, you know, why talk? Like, what's the point? Is it for me? Is it the world? Like, you know, I'm not trying to be an activist about this. Like, why? But then the next day is that Friday, and then there's the shootings at the Planned Parenthood in Colorado Springs, and there's a few people shot and several killed. And then I'm watching the news about this, and like the political pundits come out and they do what they do best, and they're attacking each other. Both sides are just going at each other with all these hateful words. As I'm watching this, I kind of start to forget, like, or I stop wondering whether I'm ashamed about having had an abortion, and I just kind of start to feel ashamed about my silence, really. And because in my silence, I've allowed these stories like mine and so many more to feel obscure and marginalized and in the shadows. And in my silence, in a way, I've left that space for their hateful rhetoric to tell my story. So I wanted to share the story tonight, and this is the first time I'm sharing it in public, not because it's unique and special and fabulous, but precisely because it isn't. So that's my story.